on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Hollywood Already Did It, your weekly, again, we're back. Movies are coming out every week.
It's a thing
Loki
now.
is almost here. Every week we have new episodes. If this is your first time on the show, then what you should know is that we are a weekly movie podcast that focuses specifically on reboots, remakes, sequels, and adaptations, and whether or not those things needed to be done and how they do compared to their source material. If there's a reason why we keep redoing the same ideas over and over again, or if we're just in it for the money. Who isn't in it for the money? That's why we
Said
all have GameStop and AMC stock.
it's always a part of it.
Yep. Everyone's in that for the money. No one believes in GameStop as a company. They just want some quick cash.
Yes.
This week is a little bit different as we are coming off Memorial Day weekend. We had two movies come out, and instead of giving you two episodes, we are going to do a quick double feature of A Quiet Place 2 and of Cruella, which means we'll go over both movies quickly, talk about some common themes, how they are adaptations of their own properties and IPs, and the box office is back, so we'll try to talk quickly about that, and we'll try to do all of that in a brisk hour, the average time in American commutes, or is at the gym. So it's on you now. If you're at the gym and you don't leave, and this podcast isn't over when you leave, you messed up. And I'm talking active working out. I don't want you standing by the drinking fountain for 30 minutes because the bench press machine is taken. Just do some butterfly reps.
I was right. You can move on to the next one and come back.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. Talk to a new person. Get in between reps. Get it figured out. Anyways, we're going to kick this off with A Quiet Place 2. Terrence, what did you think? Also, I'm your host, Blake Schultz, and Terrence Tatum is my co-host. Terrence, what did you think of A Quiet Place 2?
Oh, man. A delight. It was a really good time to be. I'm glad the theaters are open because I would have hated to see this film at home, but I really, really enjoyed this movie. It's surprising. This is one of the few times where I'm like, I can go either way, whether the first is better than the second or the second is better than the first. I think they're real close. The only reason I always give the edge to the first is just because original, and there's just a lot of the rules and ideas and rules that are set in that are piggybacked and expounded upon this. But that being with said, this was amazing, and another one of those brisk walks where it's only an hour and a half and you're like, oh, you get in, get out, and it just gives you the bang for the buck. I thoroughly enjoyed this movie, and I don't know if we will talk about it if they continue on. I love that the focus of who your lead character is completely shifted, and I love how who we shifted to and how we shifted there, because I think it's genius to go to the little girl. And then I mentioned this on the YouTube thing when I talked about it. Like, one of my favorite parts that is just a super well done thing that you don't think about is one of the scenes where our lead character is in peril. We're hearing the sound via how the audience would hear it, and for a brief moment I forgot that character was deaf. And I'm like, oh crap, she can't hear that she is now in danger. Stuff like that is just so genius. And I'm like, how they keep doing fresh things that are, it seems like this could get old hat really fast, but they always keep you on your toes. And it's a really well, Krasinski, chef's kiss, well done.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really hard for the Last of Us HBO show to do anything that these movies haven't done.
As soon as she went to that train and like looked out into, I was like, oh, this is Last of Us. Oh, they're going to have a hard.
Oh, it's been that way since the first one. I remember when everyone was all, oh, it's a new sound-based creature. And I was like, you play video games, you fools. We've been here for years.
Yeah.
I agree with everything you said. I loved this movie front to back. I think it does a great job in the horror genre of not falling into a lot of cliches you see, especially in a sequel. We see a lot of interesting scares, not necessarily jump scares. It's very tense. You're grabbed the same way you were last time. The intercutting of the two stories and even having parallel shots of what's going on, them picking up guns and aiming it, and everyone's agency and motivation was very clear and crisp in it. I thought they did a great job of keeping a lot of characters moving and in line and never really contradicting each other. And starting on day one just made you go crazy. This insane space landing phenomena, you know what's going on.
It's so well done. I love that the movies opened literally at the same location, just at very different times. Well, that's pretty damn genius. I love it. And seeing it, what's crazy, you and I always talk about this. Whenever we do stuff that shows like sort of a prequel, it usually sort of the bite is taken out of it because you're like, I know these guys are going to be fine. Not in that case. That opening sequence was so just in your face, balls to the walls. Like, I know these guys are going to be fine, but what the hell is happening right now?
Well, they did a great job, I think, of showing a very real version of how that would be. The confusion followed by people figuring it out, followed by people praying, doing everything they would do normally. The panic, I think,
Mhm.
that we have not seen in real life since March 13th, of really how that grocery store is going to look when everyone's going crazy, and how everything's going to be, and how quickly it really all does shut down. And even the timeline now makes a lot of sense. You're like, oh, it's been like a year and a half. That seems right. This all seems fair. And you're
Yes.
right. This was a movie going experience. And while it will be on Paramount Plus in 45 days, the 90-day release window is dead. You can wait. It really coalesces in that audio, and it keeps you enthralled. I feel like this is one where you don't really want distractions. You want to be in this moment. You want to be as tense and focused as you can be. And John Krasinski has made some of the best Jurassic Park movies since Jurassic Park 1, it would seem, to quote my roommate who's made that joke. But front to back, very good. I loved where we put everybody. And I think, when we talk about whether or not this movie needed to get made, and then if it really did we feel satisfied at the end of the first one? And some of the pratfalls of other horror sequels, I think the real difference is that usually a horror sequel gets bigger in the
Mhm.
context of its deaths, in the context of, you look at the Saw franchise, which started as this intimate, tense, scary cop thriller horror world. And by the fourth, fifth movie, we're shoving
We're talking
giant
about
IV needles into people's necks.
we're doing
And
like, you know what? How can we get rid of the most amount of people? Let's have an entire maze with 7 people. Like, oh,
we're
okay, I guess.
freezing naked women and drowning people in
Yeah,
pig guts and ripping their chests out. And instead of really focusing on making those themes and ideas bigger, that franchise just made the gore bigger and
larger.
bigger and
Yeah,
bigger. And normally in a slasher movie, it's a higher body count and they're just somewhere else. And this movie takes, I think, the idea of getting bigger and builds a world
yeah,
instead, and shows you how this would affect a lot of people. We're leaving the cabin that we're in, the farm, I guess, cabin farm, same context, that we see in the beginning at the end of the first one. We now know how to defeat the monsters, and it is now the state of the East Coast. So we don't even still know what the West Coast
how
looks
far this has
like.
gone to the right. Yeah, I mean the premise of this is basically we're going to take what we learned in that at the end of the first one, and is there a way to replicate this or make this larger to save a couple more folks? But I love that it's so intimate. It does do the sequel thing, which I think is fine because it doesn't take the horror sequel trope of let's make everything bigger, higher body count. It just takes the normal sequel trope, was like, all right, let's take all of our main characters and split them apart from each other.
We Empire Strikes Backed it.
Right, which is great. If you're gonna follow one, that is a good one to follow.
If you're going to take cues, take them from Star Wars and Jurassic Park. Every
Right.
studio's been saying it for years.
Yeah. And I think that's why that worked because at the end of this, when it was over, I was like, I love this, and then I started thinking, I was like, wait, the body count on this is really low. They're not that many, but I don't care because I still had a damn good time in this
Well, it's low until that third
until
act.
that. Yes.
then then it's open season for a
Correct.
while. But that's the other thing it did well, is we start introducing new characters, but we let the audience infer a lot of what I think would have been cliche tropes. We don't need to meet cannibals and have a monologue from one of them about how when society crumbled, we figured out that we have to just be in it for each other and blah. We just meet some people. We've seen other movies. We can assume that these people are probably up to no good. They're
Yeah.
probably eating each
They
other.
correct.
And then, you add new elements. Can the creatures swim? What can we do with that? How can we make something scary that we now know how to beat scarier? And how do
Right.
we make that win? We have this very Bioshock audio cue of across the sea to come to the island where it doesn't exist. But what happens when one of them finds its way there? Which I was stunned that this island has there's not just like one guy walking around with a gun ready to go.
Yeah, I was like, that's the thing that was a little odd about that island. Is like no one's prepped. Because I feel like just in case you guys have all seen what happens on the other side of that, you just in case, let's still have one at the ready, or at least somebody in a tower somewhere. Like, look, let's take shifts. No, they're like, we're good. Everything's fine here.
Yeah, and I think we did a lot of good world building while still keeping the intimacy of the first movie alive. You know, we are locked in a room with the wife and the son. And that's very Quiet Place 1.
It
We're
is.
back in there. We've figured out how to raise the stakes with this automated safe. We're counting down to the one figuring out how does it hear them? When is it blind? What can we do with sprinklers, with alarms, with gasoline, with just the heat, the idea of oxygen? We showcase a lot of what other people are going through. How are they acting in this world? We have bear traps and other accoutrement of hunting wildlife. And, the other one's a very straight shot to the island. We're going to turn it on. We're going to blow them all up, Mars Attack style, once they all hear that audio. It's
Yeah.
going to be great. We're taking a lot of cues from 90s movies. I'm a fan of any alien that dies like in Mars Attacks. I think all you're missing now is a boxer and Vegas.
That is true. That is true. And we get another one of those shortcut, like the quick cut ends that this series is sort of now becoming synonymous with. Like, all right, well, final shot, and we're out.
Well,
And I dig that actually.
the ending is interesting because it both concludes the story and insists upon a third one.
Correct.
Because, major spoilers, this crew does not get back together at the end. We turn
Right.
on the radio station. In theory, a lot of these things are dropping. They get out of their, oven. Everybody's got oxygen. The baby is safe. The son is
Yeah.
safe. The mom is safe. And yet they're now separated by a great distance.
There's a lot of space between them.
And, we don't know the rest of the world. I mean, you could open up a Quiet Place 3 and just say, the military's been making their way from California. They've almost caught up to you. If you can make it through this next 150 monsters,
Right.
you're home free.
Yeah. And does this world change now that you've gotten rid of, like you've used this sound to get rid of this version or some of these people? Does it become a little bit more dangerous because now the predator's gone, the prey that was there is now kind of roaming around and doing some crazy shit themselves? It could be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so down for more. We've shown that John Krasinski, not unlike other comedian to horror directors, just understands what he's made. I think there's a lot more to do in this world. There's a lot more to see from these characters. And, I feel like thematically, and we're going to talk a lot more about this one core idea after our second movie too, but the idea of lineage in this movie is done in such a unique way because we know who everybody is. Everyone's trying to not necessarily replace a father figure, but we're seeing the father in the kids and all of the good qualities, and it's all there. They're all the
Yeah.
same. They've learned the right lessons. We don't have any, like shock twist endings, but it's still very much about this father relationship.
Correct. And what's crazy is that now, especially if you watch them together and pair them, because you realize that the daughter in that first, she and her father were very much not together. They weren't on the same page. She didn't think he loved her anymore. And you get the end where he says, I do. But what's crazy in this is you open up and you see that it's a simple thing. It's a simple thing that parents and uncles and aunts and grandparents will get. But when you're separating kids and like, all right, we're going to take this car and you're going to take this car. She has a daughter who's very much a daddy's girl because she's like, I'm going with dad. And she's like, all right, well, cool. Then you're going to go with that. That simple thing just shows you that if she had a choice, she was going to be with her father. So you just know her not having her father in this and how poorly she treated her dad before he was dead has been weighing on her pretty heavily over these last couple of hours because it's not that much time that passes, but it's been sitting on her. So now she's like, I have to do this thing to show honor to my dad, who I kind of treated like a hot garbage for the last years of his life.
She didn't know. I
Yeah.
mean, we wouldn't have had that great moment in the movie.
It's true. It's
And
true.
isn't that what fatherhood's really about?
you,
This
you're gonna have a moment where you
great
get crapped on.
cinematic moments.
Right.
But that's A Quiet Place too. I think when we're speaking on the show's thesis of whether or not we needed this, did we keep going? And in a way, we need anything to get back to the movies right now.
Yeah.
We need anything of quality. We need to see something that right now changes the way we consume. We've seen that we can just get Cruella on streaming, that we can watch Army of the Dead on Netflix, The Conjuring 3 on HBO Max. And some of these movies might be better that way. I have
Could
an
be.
AMC A list, so I'm saving money when I see Cruella in a
Right.
theater. That's not
Yeah.
the case,
That
especially
that
if you're a family of
a
five.
5. Yeah, that was the same way with me. I was like, well, I'm not going to purchase this Cruella because I have the AMC pass. I'm already spent the money, so I'm just going to go watch it.
Right. And I think it's good to have movies, especially in one of the first 3-day weekend as cases go down, still during COVID. I'm not ready to say post pandemic yet. There's still
Yeah, we're not there yet.
cases.
Yeah.
Our biggest release, both the movies are the widest releases we've seen. Theaters are at least 50% to 25% capacity. Some parts of the country, full capacity. We needed something that we could market as only a theater experience. And I think this was that movie, even
Yeah.
more than like a giant IP like Fast Nine. I think Fast Nine's got the community and we'll all talk and we'll have fun. It'll be rowdy. And, there's going to be an Avengers movie and everyone loves that video of that hammer getting picked up and everyone cheering like it's game 5 of 1996 Bulls. I mean,
Yeah.
but this is something that you can't replicate at home. You just can't do it.
No. It's funny because it's actually a little creepier. I obviously in the theaters now you're still you pick your seat and you're kind of checkerboarded off where there's nothing around you. I think it's actually crazy to be in a theater that the sound is doing as much as and there's still you can't actually see people directly in your lineages and you're kind of like, oh, I'm in this theater by myself and this shit is crazy.
No, it really, audio design. I've been playing Resident Evil Village and Returnal with those 3D headphones for the PlayStation, and it changes the game. That's how I felt watching A Quiet Place 2. I was like looking around and trying to figure out what was where. But now let's talk about a movie that you could have seen at home. The other big movie this week, I don't know, 10th live action Disney remake.
Yeah, I don't.
You want to count things like Alice in Wonderland?
It's Maleficent and all that. It's counting. All right, sure, fine.
Right. We could go all the way back to the first 101 Dalmatians.
Right.
It's Glenn Close.
Right.
A movie that I would love to talk more about. I watched it right before we went to see Cruella. We just don't direct movies that way anymore.
That movie's fun.
We don't pretend things are cartoons when they're live action anymore.
Yeah.
What did you think of Cruella?
So this was a movie that I did not see the need for. A Quiet Place 2 was probably in that ballpark too, just the way that ended, but I'm glad we got it. But this was one I was like, why are we doing this? Guys, stop remaking every single thing. We don't need it. I don't need an Ursula spinoff. I don't need this. And about 15 minutes into the theater, the thought of like, oh, why are we doing this just went away. And I was like, I am having a damn blast in this thing. This is fun. And I just stopped caring. I was like, there's so much. It's vampy, it's campy, it's stylized, but it is glorious. Everything from start to finish of this film is a treat. And there are moments when I'm just sit there and I am in awe because I've always been an Emma Stone fan, but I am in awe of this, just the small things that she does with her face, her mannerisms, and just when she gets into full Cruella mode, I'm like, I am here for all of this. This is why I'm here.
Yeah, I was sold on the trailer. When we got that Hot Topic pop punk Cruella DeVille trailer, I just knew I was going to have a blast. That we found the one way you could take something that I just didn't think we needed at all. Because, villain movies are hard because they're villains.
Right.
And when you look at, the Joker and you go, well, we had this other version of him, society, blah, 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 but we forgot to have a good theme. And now we're getting a sequel to the Joker. And I just am like, well, now he's just a criminal, right?
Now he's just right. Now he's just bad.
You have this same problem with Venom, who's eating people, but trying to be an anti-hero. We have Morbius coming out. We have Craven. And it's not even a lack of the heroes that bothers me with these movies. It's that we have to now find a way to make people who are instinctively doing terrible things relatable
Human,
and
right?
understandable.
Yeah.
And I just don't need to understand
No,
some of these people.
you give an excuse or a cherry way out for psychos, and I'm like, well, then I think we're doing a disservice to just everyone here.
I mean, even when we started making Magneto good in these later X-Men movies, a part of me was like, I get it, but
Yeah,
it's Magneto. I mean, sometimes I want to say sometimes it works, but I just haven't really seen it coalesce in a way that isn't like an anti-hero like Deadpool, who's like doing good things through different means.
through his own means. Like Punisher falls in that category too. But then you give me like Kylo, like yeah, he murdered his dad. I don't care what you try to do in this back end, that's still there.
Well, that's a much longer conversation of just like redemption, because you do have
Mm-hmm.
to look at some of these people and you go, well, we brought back Darth Vader. Well, he died.
He died.
Well, we brought back Kylo Ren. He died.
Yeah,
A lot of these people pay for their crimes with their
by
lives once they
sacrifice.
see the light, because
Right.
it would be really hard for him to have landed on Endor and been like, what up, guys?
Hey guys,
I'm so sorry about
my
Biggs and
bad.
Wedge and Obi-Wan and the children. Oh, you don't even know about the children. But Cruella then tried to build it out in this very weird, like, they didn't say she was bipolar or schizophrenic, but they kept doing this dual personality,
Yeah.
who's locked away. But I also really liked it. It took me a while to get past the childhood stuff. That's where I was like, we can speed it up. I don't need all of this.
I was surprised it went
But
on for as long as it did. It's about a good 25 minutes of
it's a
the
lot of the
film. Yeah.
movie, and I just didn't need all of that. I wanted Emma Stone. I wanted the needle drops. I wanted the dope costumes and
Those
production
needle
design.
drops, I know it's Disney and they have money to do whatever, but these needle drops they got in this were flawless. Like whoever was picking music, kudos to you.
I loved it. I love that era. I love that music. I love that style. And they nailed everything.
Yeah.
We're seeing someone use fashion as a weapon and thematically prove like the idea of the younger generation clashing with the older generation and this need for change through a revenge story, which I don't think I've ever really seen before. It's unfortunate that the other giant twist in the movie I have seen before 1,000 times.
Yeah.
In that, you know, we reveal spoilers that the Baroness is, of course, the birth mother to Cruella, and that's why she's so evil.
Right.
If you remember that old Simpsons episode of the Treehouse of Horror where there's an evil twin and Dr. Hibbert's like, oh, there's an evil gene. Hitler had it, Walt Disney has it, and Bart has it. Not that I think Bart and Walt Disney have it, but that was the bit. And I'm just thinking about that scene in this movie, and I'm like, that's how they explained this.
Yeah, it's weird. It's very on the nose. I won't say I did not see it quite coming, but when it happened, I'm like, oh, well, of course, that's just the very easy way. But the fact that it was sort of merged together with this weird devil that wears Prada's type story, I was like, all right, I'll give you a pass because it is sort of being merged with this other style film. And I will say that the the monologue that Emma gives to the fountain makes it kind of like, all right, fine, you get a pass.
It was great. I mean, Disney's been obsessed with parental stories longer than the Greek gods of old. Did you know you were related to Zeus? He used to just come down here and run game on mortals.
Right.
And it has caused some problems. But everything else in the movie, I loved her performances. I loved all of the other side characters. I thought everybody was great. But you're right. There is a like, do we need to keep doing this? And
I don't know the answer to that because
the answer is no, of course not, unless you want to make money.
Correct. And it's money. And then every now and then you'll get something like this where you're like, oh, that was really well done. But for this, you have to sift through the Lion Kings and the Aladdins where you're like, oh, we're just doing a one-to-one copy of whatever we did before. This one's like, oh, you did something new, still not necessary. But now you're going to get you feel the comfort to be like, we can do this 7 more times.
This is at least a new take for an audience that I don't think has anything else like this. I don't think, and I could be wrong because I don't really consume a lot of YA fashion based material,
Right.
but I have to assume that there isn't any old school punk rock,
Like
revenge, Devil Wears Prada,
67 Prada
female
fashion.
led
Yeah.
story.
I don't think that
So,
exists.
it definitely feels a hole. Every generation needs their better version of the Joker so that they are equipped to debate with people our age about why that movie was unnecessary and flawed.
Correct.
And let me tell you, they will not stop.
No.
Um, but here we are. But then it doesn't really add much to 101 Dalmatians. I was never really like, why is this Cruella person so mean? I was always just like, this is how fashion people are.
Right.
I'm a vegetarian. I care about animal rights. I just assume that everybody making coats is like this.
It's an interesting movie because I mean it has a lot of like little subtle nods here and there to a lot of the 101, whether it be animated or film wise uh films. But what's crazy is that they in a roundabout way make it almost seem like Cruella is putting on the affectation of being a villain so the world sees her as that, even though sometimes she's not as bad. Because look, we don't get Cruella's like, I'm going to skin me some dogs. Because then I don't know if you can really make a film off of that, because we know one thing the world hates more than just straight up psychos is anybody harming a dog. So like if
Well,
she was
Terrence,
straight up
she
killing dogs,
gifts Dalmatians to the main characters of
characters
101
who she's
Dalmatians.
supposed to take
And
them away from
am
to
I now
skin.
led to believe that that she's like trying to
She's trying
create a meet cute for these characters
to
so
right.
that these dogs will breed
And then I
so
will
that she
murder
can
them.
murder, skin, and distribute them? Is that like,
That's
but
what I'm led to
she's
believe.
either not evil enough to become the Glenn Close Cruella or the
Right.
animated Cruella,
Or
or
she
she's
is
so evil.
right. She is demonstrably evil. If she is like, here, take these dogs, become in love with them, have them have kids, and then I will murder them all.
Because that was my one thing when we got that stinger. I was like, oh, that's cute, but isn't she?
Like,
Are
wait,
we just in a new world?
right. That's what I kind of think. I don't necessarily know if this is a one-to-one where she's gonna. I
Well,
don't,
I
and
mean, the
and
first
honestly,
movie took
truthfully,
place in like the 40s, I
40s,
think.
right. And honestly, I think just the way that this ends and how much I love the way that this style is going, I don't necessarily know if I want them to continue. If they do a second one, I don't want them to go on to
No,
do
I
a
don't.
one on
What
one. I
What
want
would
them
you
to,
do?
yeah, I'd rather, because I love the tit for tat that Emma have with each other. I'd rather her get out of prison and the two of them go another round of this. I'd rather see that than continue on with 101 Dalmatians.
Yeah, it's the making a murderer Disney style is a little tough to do. I don't need to see like Gaston get bullied as a kid or
Yeah.
Ursula get kicked out of choir or whatever else they're going to do. Um, but who knows? I mean, this was still very good. I've clearly been proved wrong before.
Yeah.
But what's interesting about both of these movies, unless you have more to say on Cruella and
Mm.
its unnecessary fabrication. It
It
was dope though. I will
so
give it a
good.
like, man, it's the I Tanya director and the writer of The Devil Wears Prada. It's gonna be cool.
Yeah.
The interesting thing with both of these movies in our double feature is that they're dealing with something all of Hollywood and as far back again as mythology and religion and every story we've told has done this sins of the father or mother. And we now have two movies this weekend that are sequels and remakes that are also retreading on a theme that we have seen time and time again in that. In Cruella, you have kind of the inverse of The Empire Strikes Back. I'm your father. This changes our entire motivation for both of us. I went from wanting to kill you as Darth Vader to wanting you to join me to overthrow the Emperor. You've gone from wanting to stop me and the Empire to you can bring me back to the light side and you can show that people far gone can return. Normally, this is how you do it well. It changes the agency and the motivations of your characters. The reason I don't like it in Cruella is that it changes nothing.
Yeah.
Even in like Guardians of the Galaxy 2, when we find out Ego is the dad, but Yandu is the father, and then what biological and nature versus nurture gets in there, you get a much more of a catharsis in how those characters are. This is a movie where she wants revenge on somebody, finds out that somebody killed her mom, finds out that she's her birth mother,
And still wants
and
to kill her.
continues on wanting to kill her.
Yeah, it's weird because I think why the reason why they feel like it's a slightly different because it's sort of a double reverse because she starts off, even though the audience is well aware that that is who killed her mom, because you can just see the way like that's clearly who it is. She as a character is in awe of the Baroness originally. So she's like, I am a fashion person who is trying to get on and I want to be in like her. Then she finds out. So it's like a double reveal for her, even though the audience is well in on the fact that like, yeah, that's the person you're gonna want to kill.
Yeah.
So it's she earns on the back end of like, oh, I love this person, I want to be them, and then like, wait a minute, you killed my mom. Wait, you are my mom. There's not enough of a third switch if you're going to do almost two reveals like that. Her character didn't really have that again, so I see how that feels a little.
It just feels like an unnecessary bump because then it also does the like, well, she was never going to be a talented fashion maker. She has to have the genetics of one.
I wouldn't say. I say that you could have ended the revealing at her just saying, "Oh yeah, I killed your mom," and that'd been the end of it. But you don't get the like, oh, but you're bad because of blood.
You're bad because of blood. This is where your talent comes from, your ruthlessness. It's very Rey and Palpatine. We can't let these characters just be good at things.
Right.
It has to come from, which like is a very odd thing. It gets very like Greek mythology of you're half god, you have abilities, you get back into Ego and Chris Pratt's Star-Lord. Ego the planet and Chris Pratt the actor. Ego was a great actor, but he was problematic.
Really did.
And it's a shame because it takes a lot of the other interesting, innovative parts of the movie and kind of puts them in the back for you to then focus on this weird moment that doesn't really raise the stakes. It doesn't challenge the character. If anything, it strengthens her resolve to become a murderer.
I feel like she doubles down when she realizes that's her mom. Like, well, I'm really killing this.
Well, Terrence, she just was like, the baby's born, kill it.
Kill it. Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
She's earned it. She's earned it.
But then, you have in A Quiet Place 2 a very similar idea of, well, you're very much like your father. And instead in this movie, we take this idea that we just cannot get away from. And instead we sort of flip it on its head. It is about this younger girl finding a new father figure, a male figure in her life, whether or not you want to call him a father figure, because he doesn't do that much fathering. And he immediately gets compared to the father.
Correct.
You failed your family. You didn't do enough. You're nothing like him. And instead, we build on this other character's motivation to go, well, I'm not. You are.
You're just like him.
At all the good things you've done.
Right.
Which I think is a much better way of doing it, because it's not like John Krasinski gifted her the ability to beat aliens. Right. It's much more like you learned the right lessons through all of his teachings. Right. And I think that's really the way to do it, to keep these kind of stories interesting, because we're going to, even if we don't keep remaking and rebooting ideas, we're going to keep being like, but the parents.
Yeah. That's always going to be a part of it. The very sequence when he kind of gives her the pep talk and says, no, this is you, just to see her face and saying, oh my God, I am like, I'm honoring him. I am like him. Crap.
I mean, Terrence, we could do a whole podcast on this. I just realized Spiral comes down to the dad relationship. Mortal Kombat comes down to a lineage relationship.
That's true.
I think those are the only 2 episodes we've done this year
since we've been back. Yeah. It's all about family. And then of course Fast 9 is definitely
here it comes. It's all about to be about family. Luckily, we haven't dealt with Vin Diesel's dad. It's just going to be his brother.
Now it's his brother. Yeah.
So it's very interesting because I feel like we need to do more of A Quiet Place 2, where it's just kind of baked in the DNA, and less of a shocking, because we Empire Strikes Back did it in A Quiet Place, and then we did it in Cruella, and A Quiet Place 2 did it better.
Yes.
If we're gonna do it one way.
Yeah.
You're not James Earl Jones, and he's not Mark Hamill leaning over Bespin with one arm cut off. You're a
Yeah,
fashion mogul in a mansion being told the rich woman you actually get everything.
I think why it feels a little bit, the movie Cruella would have been fine. We would have still loved Baroness because she was still just an asshole to Estella. We would have still loved her regardless if she was her birth mother or not. Like that is an irrelevant factor.
You could have just made the birth dad been the Baron and him had an affair,
Right.
and that's why
Yeah.
I. I'm not here to script doctor
Like
the
you didn't
movie. I
need to
really
have her.
enjoyed it.
I really loved it, but you did not need to have her be that for this film to still work on all the levels that it does.
No, it's a very interesting thing that really made a pattern in Hollywood stand out to me of we're just going to keep doing it. We're about to do it in Black Widow. We're going to go meet her family.
Correct.
I'm sure there's going to be some twist with Shang-Chi's
Like
dad.
I'm really, yeah. It's always going to be that, but it's an. I won't say it's an easy way out, but it's definitely a way that like it's been tried and true. Yeah, so they're like, oh, we're just going to keep going to this because we know this works. We're gonna go over here,
right,
and not think about this too much.
But hey, 2 movies came out. Let's talk some numbers.
Yeah.
Because I have a lot of them today. One of the ways that we determine, if you're new listeners, as to whether or not these movies are necessary is if they did what my movies were made to do, which is entertain and also make money.
Make that moolah.
And, I want to say we're back, and we are back, but we're not that back.
It's on the cusp.
We'll start with A Quiet Place 2's domestic opening, 4 days. Memorial Day weekend slid in there. 3,726 theaters, the second widest release. Both Mortal Kombat and Godzilla came in around 2,000 theaters. I couldn't find the exact numbers, but it was not quite 3K.
No.
$47 million, right behind A Quiet Place 1 at $50 million, which was released in 3,508 theaters. So you had more theaters, but 50% capacity.
Right. So the capacity split. Yeah.
We got to start knowing those seats.
Yeah. So we need to know those seat numbers because I feel like I do think that even if this was up to wherever the whole country was at least 50%, that number we would have gone up. Because I know a lot of these places, especially LA, is like at 25 to 30%.
Well, yeah, I mean, the movie was about to get a double feature re-release the week before everything shut down. I mean, we were really going to do this, but
this would work really well together.
Yeah, but I mean, what a crushing opening for the pandemic.
Oh yeah,
it skyrocketed AMC stocks. It skyrocketed enthusiasm to go back. We are seeing people re-engage in a way that we hadn't seen in a long time. That's, I think, a very successful story. The movie has, since its 47 million debut, made it up to 60. I'm sure it'll keep going. The reality is next week's big movie, The Conjuring 3, is also available on HBO Max. It's possible that we'll just see A Quiet Place knock it out again.
Yeah.
There's not really much to compete with it that you would not get elsewhere. We're now doing this with like video game release rules. When it's like, how did Doom and Animal Crossing sell the same? Well, there was only one place to get Animal Crossing.
There's only one place, so they have to go to a theater to get it. With Cruella, like the numbers aren't high, but I'm like, I can't gauge that because there are a lot of families who are like, I'm just going to pluck open $30 and watch this at the crib.
Yeah, that brings us to Cruella, which unfortunately, you're right. Disney's not going to tell us those Disney Plus numbers.
They're not.
I want them to, and I think they should. I think now is a great time, although the narrative is that we're back. No one is really spinning this in a like, Quiet Place did good and Cruella didn't. What does it mean?
No, they're sort of combining and saying, hey, as a whole, look, we're here.
And I think that's what the industry, I think for once, we're not, for probably the next year, we're going to see the studios be a little less competitive and a little more satisfied with how everybody's doing. Little more of just like, we all did it. We've all got to get everybody back.
You're going to have to, when you're looking at stuff like In the Heights and Conjuring being released both in theaters and at home, people are going to be like, well, I don't need to go to a theater to see this because I can just watch this in the comfort of my own home in my pajamas. Like I'm not going to go to it. And there's going to be some people who have like us, who have like the AMC A-list, and you're like, well, I got it. I mean,
Terrence, look, if I was in a household with 2 kids and a wife, I would have just got a Cruella at home.
I would have just watched it at home, 100%. Like my family, like I was in Arizona for the holidays. they sat around and was like, "You want to watch Cruella?" And I was like, they were like, "Yeah." And they was like, "I'm just gonna throw $30. It's five of us here. Let's watch it." And I was like, "All right." They did. I didn't watch it then because I was doing other stuff. And I was like, "Well, I have AMC, so I've already sort of spent this." But like, you have options, and I think that's what's sort of going to be a sort of a hard way to judge the box office this year, because I don't see that. Same with Black Widow. Black Widow's probably going to do well in the theaters, but you still have the option of just like, I'm just bust $30 and
I
watch it at
imagine
home.
eventually, if Black Widow doesn't open comparatively
Uh,
to at least some Marvel movies, they're gonna
like
have to show
Ant-Man,
those
like the
numbers.
Ant-Man numbers should be. I would put those in sort of a comparison. Like that's sort of where Black
Oh,
Widow
I think
should
it's gonna
be,
do
maybe a little
way,
higher than that.
way
But
better than Ant.
I'm just putting everything
This is a
into
founding
place.
Avenger, Terrence.
I'm just putting everything into place with the 20 or whatever percentage we're at. But at that point, though, we should be at 50%. But like that's sort of why I'm
Yeah.
saying it that number. But if it's anywhere around that, I think Disney might come out. It's like, hey, we need to release these other numbers too, because we can't take this L.
Well, eventually you have to, because when you look at these other numbers, Cruella opens at 28 million, 3,800 theaters. Beauty and the Beast is 174 million, 30 in 4,210 theaters. So that's that's your widest release. I don't know
Yeah.
though. Pacific theaters are gone. I don't know.
Right.
Jungle Book 103 million, Aladdin 191 million, The Lion King 91 million. All of these are in 4,000 plus theaters. So that's an advantage.
Correct.
All of these are full theaters without the option to go home and stream it. But I mean, that's just
huge.
Now look, do I think we're going to see opening numbers like that ever this year? No.
I don't think so.
I don't think Black Widow, Shang-Chi, The Eternals, Fast 9, I don't think any of them are going to pull it out that high.
No.
I could be wrong. I would love to be wrong. I would love to sit here in a few weeks and be like, Vin Diesel brought him back.
Yeah, it's a family. I don't think any of these summer films are. I don't, because I feel like a lot of people are putting their foot back in the water. Like you and I were like, hey, rip the Band-Aid off. Let's get back in there. There's going to be a lot of people who are like, I'm not ready to go to a theater yet or to be in there with a lot of people yet. So it might be a while before. I don't think this summer season is going to have anything that gets to those type of numbers. But I do think Bond is in October. I think that might be one of the first films that sort of is like, at that point, we might be around the 60-65% mark. And I think a lot of people might feel more comfortable like on October. I think it's the first week of October, like, hey, all right, Bond, I'll go back for that.
I could see that. It's the last Daniel Craig one.
It is.
It also is now the end of a non-Amazon Bond era.
MGM's like, we got it from here.
Oh my
Amazon's
God.
like, I got you. Yeah.
So then the only other thing to compare this to, because clearly what we're seeing is that families might have stayed home, but people want to go see horror movies. Surprise. I mean,
we've seen that throughout this whole pandemic, is that the films that have always been released on VOD that just go gangbusters are like Scoob, or like the family of it, Scoob and the family events and stuff. Cause they're like, well, I can be entertained my kid. And it's a 5 of us.
Even Mortal Kombat, they said, did so well on HBO Max, it might get a sequel. So I am surprised that Disney hasn't really said mum about the Cruella on Disney Plus.
Yeah.
The only other thing to compare it to, which I just think is very interesting to talk about, it's quick. Do you remember 2019 Memorial Day weekend?
No.
Because I didn't, and I had to look it up. I also looked up 2020, which was less than 1 million, and nothing was out.
Yeah.
Nothing at all.
I
don't even think there was like fun, like Scoob on VOD.
There was even nothing on. No, they were like, we're not even releasing anything. Nobody's at. They're all drunk.
In 2019, the last true Memorial Day before COVID, $213 million at the box office. So we almost quadrupled what we made this weekend.
Okay.
Aladdin opened. Brightburn opened.
Oh,
Booksmart opened.
Oh, that's a good time.
One of those movies is great.
Yeah, I love
one of them is a remake of a movie I loved, and the third one is Brightburn.
And the other one's Brightburn.
And still in theaters was Endgame.
Yes, it was.
Endgame was in, I believe, its 4th week. Pokemon Detective Pikachu in its 3rd. And John Wick 3 in its 2nd.
Wow. That was a good time.
Wow.
That feels like ages ago, but I loved almost everything that you just named. Like that was, even though I hated Brightburn, I'm still at the theaters and I watched.
I was like, I saw a movie every day that weekend. That was amazing.
That was a good time. Oh, I missed that. Wow.
I
And it
mean, I forgot what it was even like. I forgot for so long that for a year almost, we were just like, well, Endgame's still in theaters, so John Wick underperformed.
right. That was literally the like, is this going to be the week that someone knocks out Avengers? Wow, that feels like so long ago.
Centuries.
We've lived a lifetime since then.
I was like, oh yeah, Pokemon feels like it came out 5 years ago.
Wow, that is insane.
But we're inching back, you know. Who
We're getting there.
knows?
We're getting there. It's going to be a weird year though, with all this hybrid. Some theaters, some both, some not.
Well, yeah, I mean, we just don't. There's still so many things we don't know. This might be a
Yeah,
weekly show. Tomorrow they might
it
shut it
could
all
all
down
change.
again.
Yeah,
Who knows? But you know what, dear listener, to go leave us a review on iTunes. To subscribe to our YouTube channel for more reviews, trailer reactions, and whatnot. To subscribe on the podcast channel and stay tuned for our third Marvel miniseries, which will start next week, which I'm going to start calling Marvel Pair Ups. This time it'll be Loki paired up with a time travel movie every week. How fun for us.
yes.
And of course, there's also You Can't Do That Anymore on our podcast, where we look at old problematic movies and whether or not you can do it. I also do How Do You Figure About Toy Collecting, and that is it. I'm at As Always Blake, and Terrence is at Terrence Tatum, and we will see everybody next week for The Conjuring 3. I mean, look at this. I can now just do a schedule.
You can
We
name
will
it, right?
we will see you next week for The Conjuring 3, in the middle of that week for the first episode of Loki, the week after that for The Hitman's Wife Bodyguard, more episodes of Loki. We will end June with F9. We'll kick off July with The Forever Purge, followed by Black Widow, Space Jam 2, Cinderella,
The
Snake Eyes,
back.
Jungle Cruise. In August, it's Suicide Squad, Don't Breathe 2, Candyman. In September, Shang-Chi, Venom, October, Dune, Bond, Jackass, Halloween Kills, The Eternals, Ghostbusters, Maverick, Resident Evil, West Side Story, Spider-Man No Way Home, and The Matrix.
Can I say, just
We
as a
are in
you're in it,
this.
just as a moviegoer, I got goosebumps with a lot of those titles you named. Like, this is
Remember
a good time.
last year, Terrence? Are you ready to watch the same damn trailers a million more times?
Remember we showed you Ghostbusters 2 years ago? Here we go again.
I don't, and I'm ready for more. And look, there's things that aren't even back on the table. Where did Morbius go? Or did Sony decide that that is a terrible movie to release right
Like,
now?
we have in fact watched this since the pandemic, and never mind.
I don't think that's going to hit the same
Yeah.
as it. That's our show, guys. We will be back with more Hollywood Already Did It, with more Marvel pair-ups, with more You Can't Do That Anymore. So stay with us.
Later.